Today's video is a very strong topic, and I'm going to talk about false advertisement within the language learning community, and I will be making some very famous names of popular YouTube channels as well. Let's go. Hello number ones, and welcome to Metatron's Academy, the channel where we explore how to learn languages in the most fun and effective way possible. Cutting to the chase and jumping right into it, what I'm talking about is this sort of title. How I became fluent in Spanish in 3 days. How to become fluent in Japanese in 2 weeks. How I became fluent in Mandarin in 6 days. Now, this sort of title is extremely common today on YouTube. But it's not just a problem with this platform. In fact, it's something we find in blogs, articles, vlogs, all over the place. If any platform has language content, you will find titles like this. Now, the reason why I have a problem with these titles is because first, it's false, it's a lie. Second, it's clickbaity. Third, it's false advertisement. But is it really, or am I overreacting? Well, how about we check a couple of definitions together? Definition of false advertisement. What is false advertisement? False advertisement is untrue or misleading information given to you to get you to buy something or to come visit their store. Those who make and sell products must honestly present their products, services, and prices to you. Now, we're going to read a couple of other definitions just to make sure that we nail it. But I honestly think that this works perfectly because, first of all, when it says come visit their store, we can totally project this to come and visit their blog, come and visit their channel. Get your clicks to get the views to make money. And when it comes to services, unfortunately, a lot of these titles are used by people who are trying to sell you something, whether it be online courses, guru. But this kind of marketing also has connection to products, like physical products. In fact, I believe that this whole situation, this whole scam began before the rise of YouTubers. YouTubers are just reusing an old strategy. In the sense that I remember when I was like 13 in the 90s, you could find books like this at a local bookstore. They would tell you how to become fluent in 2 months in whatever language. Those are the ones who started it. Now YouTubers are using it, bloggers are using it. Jumping onto a related question on Google, what is misleading advertising? Under consumer law, an ad is misleading if it has false or deceptive information. Ads can also be misleading if important information is left out. For example, the fact that it isn't true, that they reached fluency in 6 days or 2 weeks. Misleading advertising covers claims made to consumers by manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. Let's see what the Merriam-Webster tells us. False advertising, noun, the crime of tort of publishing, broadcasting, or otherwise publicity distributing an advertisement that contains an untrue, misleading, or deceptive representation or statement which was made knowingly or recklessly and with the intent to promote the sale of property, goods, or services to the public. And this is where I think legally you get a grey line, which is obviously exploited by content creators, whereby I guess you could argue in a court of law and say, well, I'm not really selling property or goods, so at the end of the day, they still use it. But that doesn't make it okay. And most importantly, it doesn't make it moral towards your subscribers. The second point that I'd like to make today is that of what is fluency. Because I think one of the reasons why so many content creators can get away with this, even though they are doing it specifically to make you think that something impossible is actually possible, is because of how much of a blurred definition we have for fluency. So what is fluency? Let's look it up. Dictionary, definition from Oxford Languages, tells us fluent, adjective, of a person able to express oneself easily and articulately. And also as a second possible entry, we have able to speak or write a particular foreign language easily and accurately. Of a foreign language spoken accurately and with facility. And if we look at the European framework of reference, so the one that you might be familiar with if you're trying to get international certifications, the one that goes from A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, A1 being the lowest, C2 being the highest. What is fluent? Well, we are told that B2 is considered basic fluency. Now, as a former international examiner, interlocutor, invigilator, and assessor for Sitting Guilds of London, as this was my previous job, I'd like to underline that B2 is a reasonably high level. In the sense that, for example, just to give you an idea, a B1 reading test has to do with someone just writing a letter telling you about their trips and and all the things that they did, visiting a place and all the people that they spoke to. Whereas a B2 level reading test would be, for example, reading and fully understanding a semi-professional essay on Roman Britain. Also, B2 in English is different from a B2 in Mandarin or a B2 in Japanese, considering the level of difficulty you have when it comes to characters. But still, since we're talking about the smooth and easy of language learning, I think, even though, as we were saying, the definition of what fluent means is blurry, we can all agree, if we are being 100% honest and we are not trying to shield ourselves from any legal possible repercussion of our words, that whenever we see someone and they speak, they're communicating with native speakers in their second or third language, and we say, wow, that guy's fluent, we means that guy's good. Like, good. In other words, no matter what definition you choose, fluent is higher than conversational. The reason why I believe titles such as How I Became Fluent in 2 Weeks in Whatever Language a false advertisement is because, given no other context, people are going to interpret it as I started from scratch, 0, and in 2 weeks you have reached fluency. That is physically impossible. The reality is that if someone did manage to reach fluency in 2 weeks, it's because either they already were an intermediate level or they became fluent in the ability to speak about one subject. But that's not what fluency is. And they specifically did it for the camera. Now, I will soon name a few YouTubers that have a lot of views and use this strategy, and I'll do it in a second, but first I want to talk about one more definition. Clickbait. Because I can already see people out there who could say, well, Metatron, but you use clickbaity titles too. I mean, isn't the title of this video clickbaity, like, oh, sensational title that you are using to make sure that more people click? And if you look at my main channel, Metatron, the one where I talk about history, don't I often use clickbaity title because I know that people will click them because I'm making them more sensational and then pair them with very strong thumbnails? Yes, but there is clickbait and clickbait. Let me explain. Once again, the definition from Oxford Languages: clickbait, on the internet, content whose main purpose is to attract attention and encourage visitors to click on a link to a particular web page. And as we dive deeper, we get the practice of writing sensationalized or misleading headlines in order to attract clicks on a piece of content. These two definitions are slightly different. The first one says clickbait is something that is used to attract clicks. The second one is telling us that it's something that is misleading in its nature. And I believe that that perfectly divides the two types of clickbaity titles that I was talking about. You see, old school YouTube clickbaity titles were the whole reason why the algorithm actually changed from you click a video, the video turns into a view automatically, and if the video gets a lot of views, it gets pushed by the algorithm. In old school YouTube, because that's how it worked, then people made all of these thumbnails and titles that were clearly clickbait in the sense that you get a thumbnail of a girl with a lot of charisma, a sensational title, people would click it and then it would be like literally a blank screen. In other words, they were not delivering onto what they were promising with the clickbaity title. Now, back in the day, that didn't matter because you would still be pushed by the algorithm because you got the click in the first place, even if you weren't delivering. But of course, YouTube immediately found that to be a problem because a lot of rubbish content was being pushed. So they changed it in the sense that now a click doesn't become a view for the first, I believe, 8 to 10 seconds. So once again, if someone is not delivering, and you can tell that immediately, you can click away, that's not a view. Secondly, average watch time now is what matters. So once again, if you don't deliver and people don't like your content and leave, that content is not going to be pushed. But what we still have when it comes to these misleading clickbaity titles is when a content creator tells you something that isn't real. So they tell you, hey, here I've got the new footage of Elder Scrolls 8, and then it's not true. I personally never use this type of misleading clickbaity titles. What I do is I use clickbaity of the second nature, in the sense that the clickbaity title is sensational and wants to attract clicks, but then I do deliver on what I promise. And I think that that's okay. So if I say Barbarians 2 is a complete disaster of a series, and then I do show a whole video where I dismantle the series Barbarians 2 on Netflix and explain why it was a complete disaster, then I have delivered on the clickbaity title, and therefore it's okay. It's not misleading. The problem with the kind of titles that I'm trying to attack today is that they belong to the first category. They promise you that they will deliver something they cannot physically deliver, and therefore their clickbaity titles are the misleading one in nature. Let's have a look at a few examples. So I'm on YouTube right now. Let's see what we've got. First one, I learned a new language in 6 days. Well, at least she said learned and she didn't say fluent, but still you cannot learn a new language in 6 days if what you mean is that you've reached a reasonable level. You haven't even started to scratch the surface. How I got fluent in French in 30 days from Language Lords. From Language Lords and got 100,000 views, getting fluent in Italian in 6 weeks. From Nathaniel Drew, I learned Italian in 7 days. And of course, whenever we talk about these kind of clickbaity titles, the king of YouTube is going to be Xiaoma. Now, I personally don't have anything against Xiaoma. I think he's an excellent speaker of Mandarin. Is his Mandarin perfect? No. Of course, even the fact that he says white guy speaks perfect Mandarin is in itself another clickbaity title, but he at least owns it in the sense that he does admit that his titles are extremely clickbaity. The thing is, Xiaoma, even though, again, I say this with a lot of respect because I think the guy is legit when it comes to a language learner, his Mandarin is exceptional. When he makes titles like this, How I Learn Any Language in 24 Hours, and then when you click it, as you will see, what you get is, oh guys, of course it's impossible to learn a language in 24 hours. Okay, then that's misleading information, and I don't think you should do it. Mike Shake even made a video called Can You Learn a Language in 7 Days? And the thing is that this entire video is an ad for a company. So once again, you know, it's a clickbaity title. He does try to bring up the idea that he did manage to, you know, wow, he learned so much. But 7 days is nothing. 3 days, 6 days, 2 weeks, 30 days. Giving the idea what all of these titles are doing and what all of these videos are doing from channels that are supposed to be the leading beacons of language learning on the tube, what they're doing is that they are creating this false feeling in the head of language learners and people that are watching the content that yes, you can. If I really study very hard or I use this whatever technique, hopefully that people are not trying to sell you for money, then I'll be able to do in 6 days, in 7 days, in 30 days what other people do in 2 years because I'm special. This content creator is saying it. I trust this content creator. They can do it, so I can do it. Boom. And what that creates, and the reason why I think this is actually very dangerous is that then they're going to try. They are going to fail, no matter what loose definition of fluency or learning a language you want to give. It's not what people are expecting. What people are expecting is, I'm gonna do this for 6 days, I'm gonna do this for 10 days, and then, wow, my life is gonna be changed. Next time I see a native of that language, I'm gonna be able to speak to them and understand everything they say, and wow, it's gonna be great. But that's not gonna happen, and then they're gonna quit. Because they're gonna think that there's something wrong with them, since the popular content creator did it, allegedly. This is why I think this sort of content, I know it generates a lot of views, but I believe it is immoral and dangerous. Well then, how long does it take to reach a reasonable level of fluency in the target language that you're learning? Well, first of all, it depends on the language. Not all languages have the same level of difficulty. It also depends on where you're coming from. Is this your second language, or do you already have experience and have reached fluency in other languages? Which is a very important aspect that often isn't mentioned here. Which is also why someone like Xiaoma, who is really fluent in Mandarin, that's why for him, it's still not going to make it in 24 hours. That's impossible. He is going to be able to reach fluency in a language faster because he already has the experience of having reached fluency in the first place in another language. Also, the time that you're going to need to be able to reach any reasonable level of fluency that you wish to attain has to do with how much contact you can have with native speakers. So moving to a country, of course, helps speeding the process up, but if you start from scratch, as I've already mentioned on other videos on this channel, it's going to be very overwhelming because you will not understand anything. And in my experience, when I moved to England, I had already studied English for about a year, and I had already had some experience with native speakers on a weekly basis. I moved to Japan to increase my ability to speak and understand the language after 2 years of full-time university focus on the language. And this is key for making the most of your experience of moving to a country. Now, if you do move to a country, but you're not starting from scratch, so you already have an upper beginner, lower intermediate level, and then you're moving to the country, and absolutely 6 months, 7 months will make a huge difference. 30 days is what you need to start breaking the ice. 30 days is what you need to start making friends, to learn how to navigate within that culture, to perhaps find some interesting schools where you can start meeting people. And even for people who have excellent contacts, for example, you have a brother-in-law, you have family members, you have an uncle, or maybe even your dad, and you move to that country, and you're already within a family that speaks the language, even in that case, which is the best possible scenario, 30 days is not enough to reach fluency if we want to give the word fluency any meaningful definition. Will you improve significantly in those 30 days? Absolutely. Will you learn a lot of words, and will you start to be able to build your sentences and feel gratification? Absolutely. But that's not fluency. That's not 0 to B2, which is an insane difference. Because of the fact that the majority of these channels that try to push this idea are not even moving to the countries for a reasonable amount of time. They are doing it from their home, using an app that are usually paid to push. Nothing wrong with having sponsors, but attaching them to false advertisement, not really the best thing you can do. They're just there with a computer, put on headphones, repeat, bonjour, bonjour, peut-être nous sortirons dimanche. And then they're like, yeah, it's been 7 days, check out how fluent I am. I'm gonna make a phone call, which was obviously pre-planned, and I'm gonna say something to my friend who's just gonna ask me questions that I know how to answer, and then everyone is gonna be like, wow, he can speak the language so fluently. That's amazing. Here's a like, here's a comment, well done. Fellow content creators within the language learning community, let's be real and let's be honest towards our subscribers. They are here because they want help. They are here because maybe they're struggling. They haven't had the same sort of environment that we had that allowed us to reach fluency in several languages depending on the content creator. They are clicking that subscribe button and they are supporting our work. Let's not misuse their trust. Be real.